All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Houston Ensemble podcast. This is episode number 22, the most important episode up to this point. We are bringing on somebody who is a cherished gem of the internet, one of the most prolific and creative memers of all time. He owns a flotation center, a sensory deprivation float center in Florida, in Orlando, Florida. So we're bringing on Float Universe. Float, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. And funny enough, episode 22, I have two favorite numbers, 17 and 22. So I didn't ask for that, but it was a good. I saw that today on your website. I was looking at the videos. I'm like, I wonder if I'm somewhere in the queue at like 25, 30, or if I'm like, you do it like me, which is you just shoot them and you post them. Yeah. So I guess I'm 22, and that's pretty awesome. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, and quite an intro. I feel like I'm a peon in the realm of real memers that people look at on their phone, but I know a lot of those people. But in terms of the psychedelic memers, yes, I do feel like I did and was a big part of jump-starting that community. Yeah. And spreading that information via larger accounts, and because that's how it works with being viral.
And I remember it was probably a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, somebody shared one of your posts with me, and I saw it, and I was like, holy shit, this is hilarious. And then I went to your account and looked through everything, and I was like, okay, this is it. Yeah. And been following you since then, on and off. Not on and off, unfollowing and following, just me on Instagram. And then I said to Armin the other day, I was like, man, and I had messaged you from my other account sometimes. I know I sent you like a fungi U-Haul one time, and you dug that.
Was it a meme account or just a normal person?
No, it was a person. It was called Shaman Wesselkamper, or Shaman.
You sent me a mushroom U-Haul.
Yeah, I sent you one of those, and you replied to it back in the day, and that was cool. That's and then cool. I was just like, let's see if he wants to come on, because from like another perspective, we just have a lot of respect for you.
Well, thanks. And I try to reciprocate and pay it forward. And I remember when I first started posting memes like 3 or 4 years ago, and I didn't have a podcast or anything, and I was talking to people, and every once in a while somebody would talk to me about podcasting, but I'd never done one before. And this one time I actually did want to do it. This guy had like the smallest little podcast, and nobody knew who he was. And I'm like, dude, I'll go on your podcast. He's like, I don't know who you are. I'm like, dude. So I try to go on every podcast I can. Doesn't matter if it's your first podcast ever or if it's a big podcast. So I've had a handful of both of those. So it's been fun doing these things. It's just talking, and after a certain point, you're just saying the same thing over and over to a degree. And depending on the audience, you kind of put a little different flavor in there. But for the most part, it's just and the thing is, what I realized too is what I have to talk about with psychedelics and the memes and the floating and everything else in between is. It's very novel, a lot of these things. A lot of people don't know about these concepts. Totally. They've never heard of them, or they just scratched the surface. And it's interesting to talk about nonetheless. So I feel like I'm always a good guest for people. I'm always good at filling air, and it's been fun now just bouncing around. So thanks for having me on and enjoying the memes.
Can I say a quick synchronicity that I had with your podcast?
I love that. As much as you, yes, please.
There have been plenty of synchronicities for me personally, like even with your account and stuff. But 2 weeks ago, I went to the gym, and I was like, I'm gonna listen to some music, and then I was like, fuck, I'm gonna be on the treadmill for like an hour. Let me listen to something that's gonna take my mind away from that more than music. And so I was like, I'll do a Float Universe podcast, because I hadn't listened in a long time. I think the last one I listened to was the 5D Awakening Consciousness over in the summer. Mm-hmm. And I randomly clicked on the Dark Iron Gains podcast because that was the most recent one, but I'd look through all of them, and I was like, let me pick, and I was like, let me just do this one. Didn't know a thing about it, was learning about it, and then I'm listening to him, and he's like, oh yeah, kind of in Houston in Texas and close to Houston, he said. And he's like, yeah, I used to work out at 24-hour fitness all the time. And I was like, wow, the first time I ever go to 24-hour fitness in Houston and I choose to listen to the Float Universe podcast, they're talking about Houston 24-hour fitness. And I don't know if that's when I asked you to come on or not, but it was right around then that I asked you. So
Yeah, it was, and that's what I like to hear, because I feel like synchronicity is a good sign that you're in alignment with whatever
yeah,
your subjective truth is. There's an objective truth to the universe, which is bliss and love, but in terms of you like getting onto that path, you have to kind of, through synchronicity, kind of is like a breadcrumb trail back to source. And the more
yes,
I feel like it gets to a point where you're like on Pirates of the Caribbean, and you know it's a ride, and everybody else thinks that everything's out to get them. But really, when you're, psychedelics or meditation, floating, all these things can get you enough of an, I guess I call it an alignment with the source. So yeah, the more you float, for example, the more you'll be in alignment with source, because you'll just relax your ego, and everything will kind of just melt away, and you'll kind of realize a lot of things you didn't realize before.
mm-hmm. I want to say, just to go with floating for a second, my first floating experience was a long time ago when I was in high school, and it was kind of at like a shabby place in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was funny because we walked in there and the cat was like, "You hear about this from Joe Rogan?" And we were like, "Yeah," and we're in there, and we were feeling it, and then I fell asleep but kind of got into that dream state, and then I woke up, but I was like, have I been awake the whole time? I couldn't tell if I had woken up or if I had not woken up. And then I had the realization, oh crap, I could be dead right now. And
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what is right and what is going on. And then I also had to rely on the guy to knock on the door when we were done. There was no like automatic light system. And so that gave me an extra variable to worry about. But that first one was just like actually kind of psychedelic to some extent.
It's a very trippy feeling. That feeling of, it happens a lot of time when you fall asleep and you wake up and you like, you don't know where you are. You forgot you're in a float tank. You don't, if you're relaxed enough, you don't have a body. And so you're just in awareness in a void. And it's like, where am I? What time is it? Am I in hell? Did I die? Where did I go?
Yeah.
And then, you feel the water eventually, or something, you hear a little bit of sound, and it brings you back to the state of, you're floating in a float tank. But no, how many times have you floated?
Um, I don't know, maybe 10.
That's a good amount of times.
And I did hear about it. Actually, the first place I really heard about it was from the Vice documentary that they did on it. And
Hamilton
like,
Morris.
yeah, and I said, wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. Then I did it with one of my friends in high school, moved to Houston. They have some great float places in Houston. Also, you mentioned a float place in that last podcast, and I was curious about which one you were referring to, if you know the name. Do you remember the name?
In the Dark Irons one?
Yeah.
Not specifically. I'll message you offline. I'd have to look it up.
Cool. Well, and then I was reading all of John C. Lilly's books, and then I was like, oh, I should really get like deep into this, but unfortunately, I can't do it that much because it's freaking expensive.
He's dense too. Well, the thing is, a lot of that stuff you can find for free out of PDFs. You just know how to Google, and you can find a lot of that stuff as free PDFs or
Oh, I meant
as text. Oh, go ahead.
floating on my
Oh, gotcha.
on my student budget at the time.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. No, unfortunately, it can be either distance-wise out of reach, or out of your budget. But there's people that float at home too, but that's a whole another conversation. Ultimately, we laid it out where, at least at our price structure here, it would take a couple of years for you to match the price of what you'd have to pay to put it in your house. So if you're going to float, for the most part, it's easier just to pay and do a membership. A lot of places you can find it where it's relatively reasonable. But I always tell people, one of the selling points is you're going to spend a little bit of money, and it's going to be an investment that's going to pay off big time later. Oh, yeah. So, okay, it's $100, $200 a month for the membership, but hey, what's your investment in your self-worth? How much you want to spend? I mean, I think it's going to pay tenfold minimum.
Totally.
But you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was just about to say what you just basically said. I was just going to say some people buy video games, and some people float. And you can buy a video game for like $60.
Right.
Some places you can go float for like $60.
Yeah, it is like 60 to 80 here in Houston, which is not bad at all.
Yeah.
Well, if the thing is, you can do Groupons, you can look for deals, you can. I mean, a lot of places will give you a discount. You just got to know and look for it. I mean, almost every place is giving discounts, especially right now. Or here's the thing: are you guys? You're like Florida, right? You're not very shut down, are you?
No.
Right. Same here. It's
We're
been
living-
pretty much. It's
living
like we're
life.
living life. Yeah. Well, there you go. Nice synchronicity. Now, do you float?
I floated maybe twice at
Yeah.
I think it was just called the Dallas Float Center. Went there and we did an hour session. And funny enough, it was kind of what I expected. It was still very dope. You know what I mean? At the time, I was kind of dabbling with,
Entheogen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of a certain type, and it was cool because I was kind of getting there without any of that, and that was a good feeling.
Well, that's good. That you're getting there without. Is it okay to talk about those things on this show?
Yeah, it's okay to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounded like you were kind of just tiptoeing around a little bit there.
Yeah, the name, I don't want to say what name it is.
Here's
psilocybin, DMT.
Yes.
There you go.
I would say like
Brain
I
makes
won't
it. It's
I
okay.
won't be gruesome because my mom is watching. I'm not gonna be gruesome. You can be gruesome about it.
Yeah.
Do you guys cuss on this show?
We can cuss.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. I don't need to cuss for the sake of cussing. I just sometimes it just I don't know. It's
Sometimes
nice
it happens.
punctuation or it's part of a joke or it's just a way it just sounds better with an F there.
Yeah.
Then.
Oh yeah.
No, this is actually like we do try and keep this like a very real, open-ended kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you checked out like what kind of people we've had so far. We've had just normal like artists, musicians.
I looked a little bit and I was trying to figure out what the overall message of the show was. Mine, which is kind of the same as mine, which is it's just it looks to me like a hodgepodge. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
is there like a mission or a theme? I mean, because my main theme, if it would be anything, would be floating. That's the central message of everything I do. Like, okay, Float Universe. It's an extension of these things that are like psychedelics and people who have dreads that are white people and people who smoke DMT and I watch Hamilton Morris all the time, so I'll talk about that. So it's these people who do psychedelics. It's people who do yoga. It's people who like to breathe and do breathing practices, and I'll hear them chanting in the tank, and they'll bring crystals in the tank. So it's you guys look like you fit the vibe there with the psychedelic stuff behind you and the Buddha right there on the desk.
Let me show you something that I think you'll appreciate, and I think you like made a post with it the other week, but it's a tattoo I have.
It kind of looks like a Baphomet, but it also kind of looks like a spaceman. What is that?
Can you see it from where you are? Is it too far away?
I can't. It looks like either it's a bee's head or a Baphomet or like a goat head. What's the head?
It is a bee's head. It's the cave painting from the Tassaloo
Oh,
Plateau.
okay, gotcha. Okay, I couldn't see it. It's hard to tell.
Darn.
From the,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to figure out what it was. Because I post Baphomet too sometimes.
Yeah, when I was really young, not really young, in high school, I was reading a lot of Terrence McKenna, all the books and everything, and exploring and investigating the consciousness, and that image from that cave painting always just kind of stuck with me. And I'd thought about it for like over a year on end if I wanted to get that as a tattoo. And then eventually I was like, yeah, I want to do it. But I thought it was going to be the size of my fist. And then when he actually drew it up, it was basically the size of my rib cage. And I was like, you know what, let's just do it. And I'm happy about it.
Nice.
Yeah. The weird thing is, I'll tell you something. I actually tried to get my mother to try some DMT because she was going through a lot of grief over the loss of her stepson, or son-in-law. I just had a dirt moment. So my brother-in-law passed away because he was a heavy smoker, had a heart attack, as you would expect. And then she couldn't get over it. And I'm like, listen, maybe, that thing you saw in that Steven Seagal movie where he goes through a shaman trip to fight the final boss at the end of the film. You know what I mean?
I've not seen that.
I was like, that stuff you asked about, like, I know what that stuff is. You know, you can try that stuff, and maybe it might help you, you know, cope. And she was into it. She was into it. But what I did is I stalled. I stalled for months, and I tested her. I'm like, you sure you want to do it? You sure you want to do it? And eventually she flipped. She's like, no, I'm not going to do it.
That would be scary.
Well, you know, did she understand the nature of what it really was?
No, see, I think she didn't. She was emotional until she wasn't emotional, and then she.
I mean, did she understand that she would be in a place that, I mean, looks even crazier than what's behind you? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I told her. I told her everything. I'm like,
Has she ever done acid?
No, nothing. She's never done.
Well, that's what I mean. Though, like that's like the most extreme. It's like an alien shows up right now and says, "I've got a literally portal gun here, and I'm going to take you through the portal, and it's real."
Yeah, I know. But hey,
how many times have you done DMT?
You know, maybe too much. You know what I mean? I would say too much. Let's just put it at that.
Have you done it more than the Dick Kahn?
Bro, I bought that book because of you.
Is it? Did he do what? Is it 600 times? Is that what it is?
Well, at the time of that interview, it was 600 times. I think he's over 1,000 now.
Right.
Dude, it's so crazy. I want to like look more into Dick Kahn. I didn't even really like understand him. I solely bought that book when I saw you posted it one time. And also the alien information theory. I definitely read that, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that, you know, I actually want to get into with you guys.
Yeah.
Because I've been saying to Chad for ever since the big hoopla about the Pentagon releasing all that information. And not only the Pentagon releasing all that information, there's a lot of stuff the CIA was declassifying on like astral projection and going to other dimensions and what the body can actually create in this. It was like, whoa. All of a sudden, all the crazy people that you used to call crazy, you know what I mean? All the crazy people that used to be like, oh man, you're a nut for believing that stuff. So they were all right the whole time. And it was a huge shock on me, and with every single other time there's a big news in the media, I'm like, what is actually going on here?
Yeah.
Why is this so hard in the media now? So what do you think about that, Float?
Well, I think you've got a few things happening. I think that is legitimate stuff a lot of times, but then I think a lot of it is sometimes there are things they don't want you to see, and so they'll say, look over here instead. And so they'll say, oh, we've got off-world craft, or the aliens aren't going to come until we're ready, and we're better,
right,
we're nicer people, stuff like that. Now and then something bad will be happening in the news, like Epstein or something, and they'll say, oh, well, aliens are real. Oh, don't look at that other stuff. And so that's what people are really worried about, is the next thing that the Illuminati or the New World Order will do is do something called Project Bluebeam, where they project in the sky either something like the second coming of Christ, or probably more so an alien invasion, right? They could put through holographic technology Independence Day like craft over cities that aren't even really there.
Hell yeah.
And you know, so
that'd be dope.
That's the concern though, is it looks real, and it could be above you right now in your city, but it could be also just as fake as a hologram and it looking real. So I think they do exist. Obviously, you encounter entities in the DMT realm. So there are external intelligent entities in these psychedelic realms. That does exist. I can say so from an experienced, from my own personal experience, they exist. Whereas it's not something I've read in a book or a secondhand or a third-hand story. Now, as in terms of real ETs that are meat bodies that I encounter, like me and you, I haven't experienced that. I haven't seen anything in the sky. I believe and I'm open to it. And I think a lot of these things are true about Area 51 and what's his name that was doing the Bob Lazar.
You think he's telling the truth?
I think I want to believe it, but
I did too.
one
I
day I
did
watched
too.
a video on YouTube, and it was these four guys that do body language, and
God
they're
damn it.
experts. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
experts at
yeah, yeah,
people who are lying
yeah.
and deception, and they
Shoot.
all basically agreed that either he had basically said the story for so long that it was hard to tell because he'd been
Right.
saying the same story for like
Yeah.
20 years. You get time to polish it,
Yeah,
right? But
Yeah.
you
and
definitely
then
do.
but they said a lot of the he does have a lot of deception. So it was
What?
basically
Yeah.
it leans more toward deception than not. So
That's gonna
it, wa-
bum.
it was kind of inconclusive, but it's I'm a believer. I haven't experienced in real non psychedelic space, but in psychedelic realms they exist. So that's as far as I'm willing to go in terms of my lived experience.
Why would he lie the whole time? Like, you really
Probably
want to
to
put
get
us
away
through that?
with cheating on his wife at some point.
Well, again, it's they were kind of inconclusive, but again, it leans more towards the deception side. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like it wasn't a definitive he's lying.
When I watched the latest like big Joe Rogan, interview with that bearded guy, that's
Who?
kind of I forgot, but he's like a documentary producer.
The guy who did that documentary.
Yeah. And my thought was pretty much the same. I was like, it kind of. I think I even said it to Chad. I was like, this guy probably has
Yeah.
gone really good at telling the story. That's
And he's
kind of the vibe I got.
Jeremy Corbell or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like a little bit too overzealous on it, but I could also concede that maybe he's being overzealous because he's so enthusiastic about the truth that he thinks he's showing.
But then the next question would be, so then Float, you're saying it's a distraction, it's a projection. So basically, you're saying that the Pentagon story is fugazi.
I'm saying when it actually happens, it's going to be hard to tell. Unless you shake an alien's hand, think about it. It's like whatever. It's with the riots. They projected the riots a certain way, or coronavirus a certain way. It's the narrative they want to tell.
Yep.
And the thing about the hologram is they could tell that narrative. You could go out and look in the sky, and you would see it, and you wouldn't be able to determine if it was a hologram or not. So therefore, their narrative would play better than because you can also it's a lived experience narrative versus you sit in your house and you're told to sit there and put a mask on and shut up, and you don't know that the hospitals are empty. You believe that they're full because you've been told that. So that's the same kind of thinking is they can control you even more and unify us more under this one world government by saying there are alien invaders and they're here to get us. And look, well, they actually are. They're in the sky, but they're actually a projection from the Illuminati, right? So as much as I want to believe, and again, the people in the truth community and the Q community, in the Great Awakening community, they all believe in a lot of it's channeled information of these other extraterrestrials out there that have been working in the background, doing stuff like taking out nuclear missile silos and taking those things out. But they've been also working and kind of helping us take down the cabal. And when we do finally take out the cabal, and we end this basically human trafficking plague, then the aliens will come down, we'll have first contact, and we can join the galaxy, the Confederation of Planets, whatever the hell they call it. But that's kind of the general flavor of the spiritual New Age, conspiracy, Q community people type vibe in terms of those kind of aliens. So basically how it works is you've got the Draco reptilians, which are the low vibing people, that are basically the overlords of this planet. And then you've got the trillionaires and the billionaires like the Rothschilds or the Soros, and it's all working down this pyramid. The eye at the top of the pyramid of the Illuminati is the eye of providence, but it's also Satan, right?
Yeah.
They're all worshiping Satan or some form of it in like Baal or Moloch. So anyway, you've got this giant pyramid, and we're at the bottom. But so there's that, the Draco reptilians, and then the Illuminati, and then on the other side of the spectrum, it's the light workers and the higher intelligence entities, higher dimensional entities, and like the Pleiadians is a classic example of channeled higher beings, not necessarily higher dimensional, but maybe from another planet or star system. So you've got interdimensional and interplanetary, intergalactic, if you believe it.
Did you read The Law of One?
I have read it, yes.
I also read it like a couple summers ago, and
It's classic material when you're taking psychedelics and trying to figure out the nature of reality, asking whatever you perceive as God at the time. And yeah, that a lot of times will come down. And a lot of spiritual teachers use the law of one as the base of, because basically it's a good way to explain a lot of things, and it takes from a lot of the spiritual concepts. It's a very unifying book,
Was it?
I think.
I'm not really sure. But let me rephrase that. I've heard certain stuff, but in your perspective, is it like a completely debunked thing, or do you give reverence to it?
Oh no, I think it's got totally legit.
Okay, I kind of feel like that too.
No, it resonates with the truth. I'm saying a lot of spiritual teachers will use it as the core of their teachings, especially ones that aren't coming from, like, a lot of times you'll find teachers who get in trouble. Like they're not really in that space of love. They're in an intellectual space of oneness, and they're basically sociopathic or psychopathic spiritual
Sadhguru.
teachers.
Oh yeah.
And they've intellectualized, and maybe they've experienced it a little bit, but they've intellectualized spiritual truths, and
Yeah.
through other people's teachings, and they've memorized that and they've regurgitated it out as their own. And so you have a lot of that, and so a lot of times you'll find those people teaching the law of one, because again, the law of one is just a really clear example of a lot of ways about how the nature of reality kind of functions, and higher dimensions, and the purpose of reality, and your subjective experiences, all these other tools that surround us, like breathing and meditation. And even, I think it even tells you yes or no about psychedelics and stuff like that. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read it, but it's basically, a bunch of channel information, right? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it is totally, where she's just channeling Ra the entire time, and Ra is speaking through her. The thing that actually made the biggest impact on me is when not she actually, the guys were asking Ra about how the pyramids were built. And Ra states that the people at that time were so in tune with the energy of the earth that they were able to use their collective consciousness to essentially carve out the stones from the earth and lift them up with the earth's energy. So access all points of energy within the stone and the earth. And when I read that for the first time, I was like, that makes sense. That's it.
Have you ever heard of Coral Castle?
No.
You need to look into Coral Castle. That's a really fascinating example of somebody in the modern times down here in Florida. He built this out of coral, these giant slabs of unmovable things by men, basically. Coral slabs, and made a castle out of it, dedicated to this woman he loved, I think is the story. But long story short, they never figured out how he did it, and he said he knew the secrets of how they built the pyramids. And I think he was using sound technology to levitate it. So, and I think he also knew the secrets of 3, 6, and 9, which is a Tesla thing as well.
Yeah.
So look into Coral Castle if you've never looked into that. That's basically, the guy said he knew how they built the pyramids, and he did it basically.
That's another thing. So Armin and I are like musicians by trade, and we both went to school for music, and that's really like our main gig here in Houston. But we also want to do other stuff like the podcast, and I would say big to an extent on the 369 Tesla kind of thing. And I know one of our first videos that we put out when we moved into this house together was a little duo, and we really made sure to tune it to 432, which is that resonant frequency with the body. And I know
versus 440, which is the
versus
standard
440
tuning.
And I know that if we did like a full-on album, now we haven't enacted this in our current composing, but
we'll enact it.
We'll enact it post. We'll enact it in post, and we want to make it 432, and we'd like to play like everything in 432 to really just resonate with everybody. And honestly, the main goal would be to be playing shows that are completely spiritual and psychedelic in 432. Letting everybody just become one with the music. And that sounds crazy right now, and I wish that were happening tonight.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, we're becoming one in a different way.
Exactly.
We are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think pretty much everything it seems to be headed towards the direction, hopefully, that human beings actually elevate their consciousness. We actually achieve fifth dimensional state, and yeah, and maybe on one angle, it's starting to feel. I don't know how you feel about this.
Well, but in a way, we've already achieved it, because there is no time. It's timeless. You're stuck in a different kind of way of being or thinking, but you're kind of like one foot in the other, like me, I think half the time.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe that there's at least this is like a way of maybe interpreting it, that the evil entities are at like some sort of desperate, they're getting desperate, like the things that I'm seeing, it seems like there's desperation within various government entities and whoever other entities, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are you vibing with what I'm trying to get at here, or?
Well, here, here's one way to think about it. And I struggle with this concept all the time, the concept of evil and are people evil? But here's one way to think about it. Now, until I turn on TV and think about the Illuminati or the government or the president, Biden, Trump, whoever, my life is what's in front of me here is what's really real. That is almost maybe possibly a complete fallacy by a bunch of producers who want to, tell a narrative and scare people or get them to do a certain thing, like get a shot or something. So my thought is this, that maybe until I manifest it through fear, that evil doesn't exist. And I'm not, and I'm not saying that people who are hurt or get injured by somebody else or have been victimized, I'm not trying to minimize that, but and I'm not trying to attract somebody into my reality that's going to prove that point, that in the opposite direction of like, no, there is evil, so I'm here to prove it to you. No, so I struggle with that sometimes. It's like, you know what? I try not to worry about those things because I'm in my field of space. I don't really manifest those things. I don't really attract those things because I think truly it's because I don't radiate fear that attracts things that my fear would, you radiate fear, you're going to attract things to be afraid of. Right. So that's a concept I struggle with. It's a lived experience of truth, but then I see other people who I want to tell this truth to, but then they're like, they can't kind of get there where they can drop their fear and experience that truth of anything but that one reality they've been dialing into for their whole unconscious life. So that's what kind of floating does. It kind of gives you a space where you can slow down, relax, be quiet without any kind of training, meditation experience, or anything. I mean, it's very rare I have a failure. And even then, even if they're in there 20 minutes and they come out, then they've let go enough where they come out and they talk to me. And it's more like a therapy session here. They don't even know it, but I do know it at this point, that when somebody gets out early and like they come with somebody else, right? So they're stuck here, right? They drove, and they get out of the tank early. And so I know it's therapy time for them. A lot of times I'll just let's sit there and I'll let them talk. I'll hold a space of loving oneness and non-judgment. And then because they're a little bit loosened up from the tank, because even that 20 minutes, it can change your life in the tank. It really can, because some people's life is so fast and their mind is going at such a speed that there's no chance to get a gap in there, and they're not going to sit and meditate. That's going to be impossible for them. So the tank gives you an opportunity to step into that gap and to fall out of the mind and step into that space, even for just a split second. And it's like, oh, wow, that there's, even at that point, there's something outside of your normal lived reality. It's like, okay, now I want to explore this more. I want to widen the gap and fall into that space of what they call Sat Chit Ananda, truth consciousness bliss, which is when you are outside of your mind and, kind of in that space of oneness and I guess a fifth dimensional space or beyond. So that's what I kind of do here is I try to create the perfect conditions for the float so people can come here. I basically clear the runway so they can land and unload whatever they need to unload in the tank. Because once we close the door and the lights go down and they're in the water, you're on your own. It's your own stuff you got going on. And a lot of people tell me they don't want to float because they don't want to confront what's ever in their mind. And that's totally understandable. But those are the people that need to float the most.
Yeah. Whoa, that is actually crazy. I didn't even think of that for floating, but that makes a lot of sense. I want to tell you guys a story that happened to me recently. Me and my girlfriend were having a Molly type night, and we decided that we wanted to do like a ritual for a tarot card reading. And she reads tarot cards, and she's had this deck for a while, and she feels very connected with it. And so we had some crystals as well, and we were kind of like blessing the deck and putting the crystals on the deck. And then she said, "What are your intentions?" And I gave my intentions, and I won't go into all the tarot card because that's not exactly the point of the story, but every reading from the tarot card was spot on, and like to the point where it gave me chills because it was just so accurate for what we were thinking / experiencing at that moment. But
You were on MDMA, right?
yeah.
But that helps.
Yeah, I think that
It helps
there's
accelerate your electromagnetic field to create those synchronicities with those objects in the field.
and another time I believe that we saw a UFO actually in the sky, not like a hovering disc or anything like that, but we saw while we were driving on the highway a light that went through the sky that was a ball slightly.
Were you on something then too?
Yeah,
What were you on?
the same thing.
Have you ever considered that sometimes it's not about them revealing themselves, but it's about raising your field to the point where you can just see them? They're there all the time, but you're just at a vibration where you just can't see them, because that's what I've experienced.
No, I really think that probably is how it is. You're more open to it, and your energy is just, it's like your filter's open a little bit more. But I do think with the MD,
the veil gets thinner sometimes, especially on LSD. The veil will just completely disappear. You'll be like on the holodeck again. It's like, oh,
sometimes too much. Like, I feel like the LSD, it's like that can actually be too much where when the veil disappears.
I love the holodeck.
And then you start time traveling and you're getting all twisted and you're like, okay. But anyway, I think we saw this UFO in the sky, but that's also not the point of the story, but that was really crazy. And every tarot card reading was spot on. Too spot on. Because before that, I was totally into tarot cards and I'm totally into it, but I had never had that sort of experience before. But then we had also invited ghosts into the home. Positive. I made sure to specify positive ghosts, and we did not want any negative entities. And so we're in bed at this point and we're kind of sleeping or trying to sleep. And her door is slightly ajar and we have a little red light creating this very cool light on the ceiling. And all of a sudden, the door slams shut. And it is a very hard door to shut. Like, it takes force, no doubt. And there was no, like, air pressure thing or anything like that. I'm aware of that, and I've already thought about that a lot. And then immediately after the door slammed shut, the light turned off. Now, the light is on a 1-hour timer, so sure, maybe it hit that 1-hour mark, but at the same time, that doesn't matter in this perspective because the door slammed shut, the light turned off. And we both said, whoa, that was wacky. And then we're sitting there.
You're sharing that, you're both sharing that space of heightened excitement and belief that there's something there. And I think all that coalesces to actually create it sometimes as well. Not to say that it didn't happen, but in my experience with phenomenon, it's always heightened electromagnetic energy, whether it's sadness, grief, happiness, joy. Those phenomenons, synchronicity, ghosts, tend to happen much more, and those heightened, especially obviously psychedelics. There you go. That's another one. Heightened electromagnetic state, heart and mind coalesce together to create some kind of reality, or you puncture the veil or penetrate the veil.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. But she was a little bit more like asleep, or at least trying to go to sleep, and I was kind of still laying there. And I was looking at this circle image of this Egyptian. It's kind of like a female Egyptian character, and it's on her wall. And I was looking at it, and then the space in front of it started to vibrate. It kind of looked like how heat looks when you look at it from afar, and it's vibrating the space. And I was looking at it, and I was like, is it my eyes? Are my eyes kind of like messed up right now? But then I kind of looked around the room, and I didn't feel it as much, and then I kept looking there. And then it was really vibrating. And then I noticed that it was essentially a ball of energy, and it was moving across the room. And I was like close to the bed. And I was like, oh my God, this is really like an energetic phenomenon of some sort. And then I looked up and I saw it as like an energy smoke come onto the bed. And I can't tell you if what I felt in my legs was me creating that feeling just from the kind of fear / excitement of it, or if I was actually feeling the energy come upon us. But that was the most real ghost energy type experience that I've ever had. And I swear that I really do think it was accurate because of the tarot card reading and everything that had led up to that moment. And since then I've been like, wow, I would like to do that again.
Sounds like a powerful night. Well, those you'll never recreate that, unfortunately. I've tried so hard to recreate some of my best psychedelic moments, and I've never even come close. So,
Yeah.
you're a different chemical makeup bag by the time you come back. You can never step in the same river twice. Neither you or the
Totally.
river are the same. So. That's the bummer, but that's also the fun thing about psychedelics. And that what I enjoy about psychedelics is there's a good built-in protection where you can't do them too much because you have to double the dose, and you're either going to waste the psychedelics or you're just going to be tripping like an asshole all the time, wasting money and just wait. Because at a certain point you become just like a loser, just laying there. But also they kind of will they'll give you a bad trip and they'll tell you, okay, it's time to back off. It's time to go work on these things that we keep putting in your face over and over again that you refuse to accept. And so I'll kind of take a little side road here. I think the most important thing I do with the floating and psychedelics is, hold on, there we go. Somebody was beeping. But no, floating and psychedelics, huge, right? A lot of people in the floating community don't want to talk about it because they don't want to encourage that to come into their float center. But by virtue of what I do online and with the float universe stuff, I don't have a choice. And John Lilly, the inventor of the float tank, essentially, he was a big psychedelic explorer, LSD, ketamine, giving LSD to dolphins, stuff like that. So I kind of follow in his. I'm a little bit of Terrence McKenna, a little bit of Hamilton Morris, and I'm a little bit of
definitely. What's kind of funny is, like, as you said, all three of those things, you literally do kind of like feel and look like a morph of all three. Did you ever see that graph that John Lilly made about the dosage of ketamine and the mapping of the consciousness plane and when you start to meet different beings and whatnot?
That's one I haven't seen, actually.
Oh man, I think it's in the book, like Center of the Cyclone or the Cyclone book. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
But he literally
he's very
mapped
dense
it.
reading too. He's very dense. It's a dense read with him.
It's so crazy. And then you watch interviews with him and you're like, oh my God, this guy is like on a whole nother level. But that inspired me to some extent, and I think, which is why it made me want to float more, because I really want to use the float tank as, a way to help explore the consciousness and see what that means.
Well, that's where I was going with the psychedelics, the float tank. So what the float tanks allow you to do is to reach a state of stillness and quiet that is unparalleled unless you have 15, 20, 30 years sitting in a cave meditating. It's just unparalleled with no prior ability. And so you're laying there in this heightened stillness, heightened quiet, and you can really understand what the psychedelics are trying to get through to you, what the mushroom is saying, because the mushroom speaks. I'm sure you know that. And that's why Terrence McKenna always is talking about 5 dried grams in silent darkness. Well, we've got the silent darkness, and we've got the levitation element. We've got the zero gravity. You're going to decompress your spine. That's another thing. People get in the float tank for the first time. They've never relaxed that deeply.
Yeah.
You've got this your gravity pushing down your spine all the time. People get in the tank and their body intuition starts to kick in that they've never even knew they existed. They're like, oh shit, half my body is like screwed up. I need to go see the doctor about this, because they're laying in the tank and they can't relax half their body because they lived an unconscious life up to that point, and they're now everything's being revealed. And I can lay in the tank in the morning for 20, 30 minutes or at night and after a long day, and I can hear things just by virtue of laying there and relaxing so deeply, they snap back into the place they need to be.
Whoa.
And if they don't, you'll hear the pop or the snap too without you even doing it. They'll just kind of like slip back to where they need to go.
Wow.
And so that's what I mean by people getting in the tank, and then it's like, oh, this isn't right here, because I'm laying in the tank and I can feel how screwed up things are in my body, because you're just so relaxed. The body wants to kind of default to its relaxed position, but it can't, because you've had 20 years of head injuries, and now it's revealed that your shoulder's screwed up and your neck and all this whole side of your body is all jacked up. So the immediate takeaway from floating is going to be the physical benefit. You're going to be laying in 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. You're going to get the magnesium. That's the default for everyone. That's the guarantee. I can't guarantee metaphysical stuff. I can't guarantee spiritual stuff. Here's a big tip for first-time floaters. I'm sitting here every day. I'm on it for 2 years hardcore now, running the show here, and I ask everybody different questions coming out of the tank. And 99 times out of 100, the people who have visionary experiences in the tank have their eyes open. So that's a big tip,
Oh,
because it's an interesting thing. You're laying in the tank,
wow.
you're relaxing everything, but you're laying there with your eyes closed. For a couple things are happening. First of all, you're flexing those muscles, so that's right off the bat. Everything's relaxed but your eyelids, which is weird. And so another thing is, you're used to closing your eyes when you sleep, and your brain is like, okay, it's sleep time, it's meditation time. So it's almost a thing your brain kind of knows. Whereas if your eyes are open, your brain doesn't understand that this positionality of the lids are this way, but there's no light at all. And so the brain starts to freak out. Up becomes down. It feels like some people, their
Yeah.
first experience is like spinning down a drain, or it feels like they're coming, like they're laying like this, but they're kind of like orientating up. Or it can feel like an infinite void. It can feel like so many different things. And that's just the first time. And then you float more and more, and it becomes a deeper journey. You floated like 10 times, so you know it gets progressively better the more you learn how to do it. You learn what you can relax.
You know,
And
you know
but-
what I would say actually? What's weird is I feel like my floating as it progressed did not become more metaphysical. For example, I swear the first time
oh,
was
same
the,
for me.
was
Same.
the most.
Mine's at this point, and now when I do psychedelics is a different story.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this is a shame, but I live here, so most of my floating has been, I get up in the morning, I inspect the tanks sometimes, and I will lay in them 20, 30 minutes for the physical regeneration. But every once in a while, I will be a 90-minute float. But the really, like, if you get into John Lilly stuff, John Lilly is not floating for an hour. And so
Right.
this is something I need to address
Yeah.
here that people rarely understand. Okay, you're going to float for the first time. You're not going to get altered states. It's going to be rare. It would help if you have meditation experience, but it's going to be almost highly unlikely that you're going to get an altered states experience the first time. And especially if you have sky high expectations. The first rule, I think, with floating is, besides not touching your face to keep it dry,
Yeah.
is no expectations. You know, you have a high expectation and nothing happens, you're going to be disappointed. Oh, I'm never going to do this again. $50 wasted.
Yeah.
So no expectations is the number one rule. And what were we talking about?
Now I will say the first time I floated, we had eaten
Edible.
a cannibal.
Right. Well, I tell people to try to get that baseline experience of what it is before you start mixing in things, because then with
Agreed.
the edible, you don't know where the edible begins and the floating, ends.
And-
Where that, one ends and one begins.
That's true. And all of mine subsequent after that had been totally baseline. Every single one of them, actually.
Yeah.
I have a
I say,
question.
oh, go ahead.
About a few minutes ago, you mentioned that sometimes the entheogen can like tell you to buzz off for a little bit. It could be like, you've done enough. You know what I'm saying? And I actually had that happen, a very intense version of that. Now a little more than a year ago, and since then I haven't touched Dimitri at all. And as a matter of fact, well, that's a lie. I'll tell you that's a lie, but I'll tell you something. I did try it, like a huge dose once at a friend's house. No.
Oh, okay.
At a friend's house, and this is the crazy thing, Float. So, I mean, it was
My house?
no.
Okay.
It was like the monument. It was like the biggest rip probably I ever taken in my life. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is the hilarious thing. It didn't do anything.
Oh,
And now, check this out. But sometimes you can get a weird burn. You know what I mean? You get a weird burn, and you don't get it on time, and you're fucked. But what's crazy is that my friend then took it and just smoked the remains of it, and he shot into space. You know what I mean?
I remember that.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're talking about.
Which was very weird. And then at that point I was like, damn, maybe like it's cut me off. Maybe
They control it for sure. I've had experience with mushrooms like that where I one time took 5 grams expecting, and I had done all the proper things. I didn't just do them the day before. It'd been months, so there was no tolerance issue. I said, this is going to be epic. I was kind of worried, 5 grams is not a baby dose.
No.
So I said, you know what, let's go for it. I did it. Nothing happened. Very disappointing. Very
Whoa.
disappointing. And then I don't know, 6 months later, I did a gram or less with some friends, and I was on the floor. I was on the floor. I was the big shot, but they kicked. The mushroom said, you know what? Here's the lesson. We control what happens. You can lay the mushrooms out on a table, and you can give your friends as much as they want, and they'll be all right. The mushrooms control the experience they're going to get, whether it's going to be inert and nothing's going to happen, or whether they're going to be on the floor crying, figuring out what they're doing wrong with their life. They're going to get what they need. And so I always trust that I've never given anybody too much, because like I said, I've eaten the 5 and nothing's happened. I've eaten less than a gram, and I've had some of the most profound, painful and embarrassing experiences. So definitely that can totally happen. I'll tell you another story. LSD. I gave a guy LSD one time who, he was a friend of mine, and he runs a business, and he couldn't sleep, and he was working really hard, and he wanted to trip like the normal trip, to see things, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, have a good time, lots of colors, blah blah blah. Well, I gave it to him, and I kept calling him that night. I gave it to him, nothing, and the next day I called him, nothing. 48 hours goes by. I finally hear from him. He's like, he slept for 2 days straight.
Whoa.
So, but he took 2 tabs of LSD. You're not supposed to be able to do that. He took the tab. I'm saying, you take the tab. I can't sleep for 2 days when I take 2 tabs.
Right.
He slept for 2 days. And so I asked God, you can kind of have some body talk. You can learn to talk to your body. And goosebumps for me is a good way to know, like, you can call it Holy Spirit or intuition.
Yeah.
But definitely got the confirmation on that when I asked it with the goosebumps there. So yeah, man, it's the mushrooms and the floating and what are we talking about?
And I want to piggyback off that.
I'm stoned, by the way, if you didn't know.
Great.
Well,
you guys smoke?
Of course, man.
Don't we?
I don't know if we can say it in front of Mom.
We can. No, Mom's actually cool with it. No, she's
Okay.
like, she be productive.
Yeah.
Be on
You look like a music producer, by the way.
Man, thank you. I'm trying.
I'm trying to forget I can't remember his name. He was a really good one.
Oh, I actually look like somebody.
Yeah, you look like somebody famous.
Was he white?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'd be cool if it was anybody, by the way. Don't get that twisted. I didn't mean it like that.
Nobody takes it that way.
But what you were saying about, like, they control it, I've never thought about it. I have 2 things to say. I've never thought it about like that. I've never thought about it like that.
You haven't?
For mushrooms specifically.
Well, God controls it, but yeah, you can, the mushroom entities but yeah, the universe controls it ultimately. Think about it like this: the universe is everything, right? It's everything, literally. It's the hologram, right? Everything is God, even the devil's God. It's a hard concept for people at first, but the universe, everything springs out from the universe. The concept of God and the devil even springs out from that hologram. So, that being said, it's like a hand, right? So the hand of God pops out and then gives you all these psychedelics. And so even though you get the thumb and it's the mushroom, it's still part of the hand of God. So the mushroom is not separate from God. The information it's getting to you, it's just putting on a mask and saying, hey, I'm a mushroom, and you need to know this about your life. Wow.
I love that. And so our other roommate here, he recently moved down here from Cincinnati as well. And we went to high school together, and we kind of, did this exploring together in high school and very early college. And the first time we did some mushrooms together for the first time when we were in high school, and we did an 8th, and we didn't exactly know what we were getting into. And it was the second craziest experience, I'll say, of my life, where everything is like completely, the ground is made out of Pez. It's a roller coaster. Everything's amorphous. But the thing is, I'm so blissful and ignorant in that first time that it does not frighten me in the sense that my reality is a complete shift, or that my reality has been completely changed. But then another time we do 9 grams each, and we drink it. AKA crush it up. Yeah. Or let me rephrase that. Grind it up. Let it soak in orange juice. Somebody told us to do this. Let it soak in orange juice for a while. And
lemon tech.
Yeah, and then lemon tech, and then drink.
That's what they call that.
Drink the sludge, and I swear to God, man, by the time that we were done drinking it, it was the hardest thing ever.
You drank 9 grams of lemon tech sludge?
Yeah.
Just by yourself, or you guys split it?
No, we each took it.
9. So you took 9 dried grams. And
yeah,
that's a lot, dude. That's a lot.
But by the time we had finished drinking it, it was already gone. And we were like, whoa, let's sit down. Let's listen to a little Miles Davis. Let's see what
Wait, so what do you mean? What do you mean by the time you sat down? What do you mean?
Okay,
By
so
the time you sat down drinking, it was already gone.
drinking it. Yeah, we're drinking it. We finish it. By the way, it's horrible. It's the most gross thing ever in your entire life that you will ever consume. Unless you consume other things that are grosser. But we finish drinking it and we feel it coming on.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
immediately.
Yeah, hit you before you sat down. I get you.
But then, you're good. We sit down and put on a little Miles Davis, and we're in there. And Miles he's speaking to us, and that's cool and but we had planned to go to the park and do a big hike in the woods. Mm-mm. Even go on a run. We were like, yo, let's try and work out while we're on this.
No. Crazy.
And so we open up the garage, and it's like a movie. We open up the garage, and the sun starts shining through the garage, and it hits my eyes, and I'm blind for a second. And then we come out, and I'm in Narnia. And I'm like, oh, shit. And everything is on saturation, 100%. And I look down on the concrete. Mind you, we're just in a suburban, mundane Ohio neighborhood, lower middle class. Mundane as it gets, which is actually extremely dystopian when you start thinking about that as you're walking through the neighborhood and you see the little AT&T truck and the little flower truck, and you're like, whoa, this is all like a microcosm of just something that's greater and more mundane, which I hate thinking about, unfortunately.
Well, it could be not mundane. It's just a perspective issue.
I know, and I understand that now, but in that moment, and
maybe you're just having a low vibe trip at that moment. Sometimes
at that moment,
sometimes you're low vibing. Yeah.
Only at that moment, though, because it was still amazing.
A lot of times I'm just thinking about death, and sometimes, okay, I'm living this mundane life and I'm going to die, and it's kind of depressing sometimes to think like that. But that's part of the trip, man. That's more the constant dance of mortality.
Yeah, but then we were walking to the park. And everything was like, oh my God, every single piece of every molecule was moving / dancing / saturated. And I looked down on the ground. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this right now. But, we had to. So we're on the walk to the park. And then we do this big hike, and it's super spiritual. And I feel like I'm going to die. And I'm like, how much water do I need? I don't know if I'm dehydrated or not, blah, 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 blah. Let's get out of the forest. And then we get out of the forest. And the light shines on us like God, and then we make it to the top of this hill, and we're just sitting on this bench looking over the city of Cincinnati to an extent in the wilderness. And I just start sobbing, of course, and it's great, and it's amazing. And, to cap it all off, we went to Buffalo Wild Wings at the very end of the night.
Now, how much did you learn? How much communication did you have with the mushroom, do you think? Or was it just like you exploring the fact that you were just that blown out?
Honestly, I feel like it was more of an exploring the fact that I was that blown out. One thing that I will say that was very, very interesting that I had not experienced before is that we were at one point throwing the Frisbee and back and forth to each other, but then we stopped and we were, probably 40 yards apart, something like that. And we stopped and we aligned our eyes, and his whole body disappeared for me, and he became a diamond speck in my line of sight, and I became a diamond speck in his line of sight. And I was like, whoa, dude, it's like if you put like a weird filter on like photo booth or something where it like messes with the image. He just became this weird speck. But that was crazy. But again, not really speaking to me necessarily. I'm not necessarily feeling like I'm hearing a voice, but the whole point of this was that I've also done 4s, 5, 6, and they haven't been like that. Or I've done 1.75, and I'm like, oh man, I'm in a claymation right now, and this is messed up.
Yeah.
But
I have another theory about tripping, which is the more still you are, the more the inner world, the inner thing can happen versus, like, for example, when you're tripping, whether it's LSD or mushrooms, I think, and you're outside running around or even inside trying to do something that's intensive physically or something to do with the external world, even mentally, the trip is working really hard to keep that together. And so it almost feels like you're not even tripping sometimes because you're trying so hard to maintain this physical world. Whereas if you would just let go and give into the psychedelic, hold on, I got a thing popping up here. If you just give into the psychedelic experience, and which is why floating is so important to help you relax, Like when you go out and trip and roll around in the grass and hang out with your friends, that's cool and all. But this is a perfect example of what I mean by communication with the mushroom, where you can have this extreme silence and darkness where there's no effort to create the
Yeah.
external world. Your mind is putting it forth no more effort to create sunshine or to communicate with your friend or to even move your muscles around. You're just completely the body. I mean, it's a launch pad for out of body experiences. If you know how to do that, guaranteed. Now, I'm not an expert in that, so I can't sit here and tell you how to do it. But I think part of my problem is I smoke too much weed a lot of times to get in those special spaces where I'm not just going to pass out, because I think there's a
Sure.
line with meditation and relaxation and astral projecting and your body starts to shake and stuff. It's you either pass
Yeah.
out or you freak out before you actually fly out.
I will say
So,
that weed, when I was going through like intense periods of meditation where I was doing it all the time, actually completely added to it sometimes where I
oh no, that's the thing. You were on the good end of it, whereas I'm like the chronic user who is using it to get to baseline in the morning, like a cup of coffee,
sure.
and I'm not really getting stoned like you are. And where I got friends that don't smoke it at all, they'll take one hit and they're good for the next month, and
Yeah.
they'll be that stoned off it, and that's like, oh, I'm almost jealous. But they don't, but they're not enjoying it every day. So there's a balance. It's like Terrence McKenna. He's a huge marijuana proponent. He was
Yeah.
almost always stoned.
Yeah.
He wishes he could. He always talked about how he wishes he would have had consumed less cannabis. And sometimes I feel that way. But again, for me personally, it's been one thing on the level of physicality that has made my life possible to even get through without using pharmaceuticals or depending on anything. But that's literally all I've depended on to survive physically through pain. And then there's obviously the psychological aspects of it and the metaphysical, just loosening up the mind and stuff. So I just enjoy it, and it's a certain vibe.
And I was going to say one more thing. I
Oh
kind of
yeah, yeah.
forgot regarding the controlling of the experience from the opposite end regarding DMT. I went through a point where I was like, wow, am I not like breaking through anymore? Because I felt like I couldn't really break through per se. Like still have an experience to some extent, or even just have a very light experience and think that, wow, I should have had more. But honestly, I think it was just me on that point. But the thought ran through my head, oh man, am I already dead or something like that, to where it's not working, or I'm in some sort of situation where it's blocked for some specific reason. And the reason that I thought that is because we're going to go to another point of it, and we're just really going out on all this, just being open about it. I had an LSD experience where I witnessed to some extent this pure synchronicity vision in my head where essentially I died. I was hit by a bus. And in that moment, that synchronicity, like it's like a school bell hit, it's like ding, like where it just happened. And I saw everything in my head, but I saw this timeline type circle thing, and I just immediately, when that happened, when the bus hit, I just jumped to the next timeline. And so it's like it didn't happen at all. And from that, I've literally never been able to shake that. Not that it makes me feel bad or anything like that, but the profoundness of that experience and the clear image that I have in my head and still do to this day, the memory of it, of jumping this timeline and understanding that it did not even affect me and I just continue to move on.
I feel like that's happened to me many times where I've been in accidents and there's the version of me that died, and then there's the part that consciously found another way out into another side reality where there's a body for me, and or I can just, my consciousness in the multiverse of infinite realities, right? When I get into these car accidents or things happen to me, I'm through grace, right? Not of any doing of my own, but through grace, I'm able to find these realities, these grace points where I'm in that quantum side universe where it's the best possible scenario, and it actually benefits me now to be, in a situation I didn't ask for, but through grace, I'll be able to see the silver lining, which is actually better than anything I could have done myself. And so that's a high level spiritual dance there. But you reach a certain level of stillness and understanding. You grasp. You don't even grasp them. You embody them, and you start planting seeds in other people, and you start to see the forest grow. And then
Yeah.
there's all little things along the spiritual path that make you want to go at it more, especially in the beginning when you're having all these revelations in the float tank or with meditation, or you're doing breathing techniques, and the next thing you know, I'm floating out of my body. Or a perfect example for me is one of the initial experiences was I was laying in the tank, and you don't know where the body ends or begins if your eyes are open or closed half the time, and you're just laying there. And I could hear the sound of, it sounded like a buzz saw. I didn't know what it was really, but it sounded unnatural. And I just laid there in the tank, and then I finally figured out what it was, and it was me snoring. So I was fully aware outside of my body in a way in this tank, listening to my body snore. So my body was asleep, but my awareness was fully there. And at that moment, you have these huge shifts. You go from living one state of mind and one belief system to, holy crap, I'm not my mind and body. It's really true. I just proved it without a shadow of a doubt. I don't need to read it in a book. I just experienced in a float tank for $50. And I'm not going to say that, I'm not saying that you're going to get there every time, and it may not happen the first time. That wasn't the first experience for me. Mine was more like I'm going down the drain, and that was cool. But zero gravity and darkness, and just initially for me, I didn't think I was going to be able to do 60 minutes in a float tank, being able to be still for that long. I mean, the first 20 minutes was me like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
You're naked, you're laying there, you're at the mercy of your mind and what's going to pop up. And luckily I'm okay. But it's a novel experience that you're not going to experience even on drugs. And that's why I encourage it also. It's just, hey, go for the novel experience of, it's like, not jumping out of a plane, but it's just as novel as that. You're not going to be able to do it or experience it any other way but going out and actually jumping in the float tank. So, I mean, I could literally talk about it all day long. That's all I do.
And real quick, I'm going to go to the bathroom. You guys keep talking. I'll be right back.
It's like a Joe Rogan episode.
I'll be right back.
You gotta go to the bathroom? I gotta go a little bit.
So what are you guys drinking there? What's the drinks tonight? What is the green thing you got there?
That is a great question. And I want to say two things. Number one, these are Eighth Wonder beers. Eighth Wonder Brewery is a venue we play at every week. Eighth Wonder Brewery at 2202 Dallas Street, I believe. That's the address. Check us out every Thursday, 7 to 9. Delicious beers. And the other thing I was going to say, if I could take a second.
Oh, yeah. Anything you want to say?
Epic Water Filters. Epic Water Filters is a godsend because it's one of the few filters that actually filters out all of the essential impurities that you really do not want in your water. And the filters come in many forms. You can just get the filter, or you can get a water bottle with the filter in a variety of other situations. And we highly suggest you do that because truly, there's chemicals in our water that the United Nations won't even touch. That's saying a lot. And so use promo code Houston Ensemble for 20% off. I really, really encourage you guys doing that. And now I want to ask you a question. So I've been titillating with the idea that maybe there's actually a lot of scientific data on the interdimensional entities that we've been talking about. There's probably more. Look, we're a couple of guys, okay? We're a couple of guys, and we're talking about entities that exist in other realms, right?
Right.
And I know from what we've already seen with the outing of the Bohemian Grove, we already know with the outing of the Skull and Bones activities and a variety of other rituals, including the Satanic Church, that there's a lot of use and there's of entheogens, but also ritualistic use of entheogens to speak to entities. And so now it's like I'm beginning to feel that we're just like the retailers of this whole experience. We're we're seeing a small part of it, and I know that you believe that there's entities, and I also believe that there's entities. But I wonder about the nefarious circumstances in which some people might think that, oh, well, these entities actually want me to do this. These entities want me to do that.
Well, there's a few things going on here. So I think the entities exist on the spectrum of, high and low vibration. And when you've got the elites that are communicating with whatever they think it is, I believe it is a lower dimensional entity or some kind of extraterrestrial passing itself off as some kind of ancient god. And these aliens, if you get into it, they like adrenochrome as well. They like to harvest humans for their adrenochrome, just like the people do. There's something about adrenochrome that even aliens want to drink. So that's part of the deal. Welcome back, by the way. You got new glasses there, it looks like.
Dang, you noticed. I was hoping that I
yeah.
could do a kind of timeline switch on you.
No, well, that's what I do with people, actually. So that's funny you do that, because people will get in the float tank and I will wear a really interesting outfit like this. So they really, they'll kind of like
Notice
dress
it.
notice it, exactly. And then they'll get out of the tank and I will completely change shit around. Completely change my outfit, like almost the exact opposite. They have to notice it. And some people won't even notice, but then there's people that obviously are like, wow, like what happened? Like, well, you're wearing another shirt, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? I fuck with them. Like, nope, I was not wearing this shirt. You're crazy.
That
woman.
is so funny.
But yeah, no, the aliens, man, the aliens. What was the question before that? What were we talking about?
Communication, like various.
Oh yeah. They exist on all different levels. So for example, an alien at a high level is an angel, right? An extraterrestrial on a very high spectrum of being is an angel, right? Whereas a very low level would be a demon. So I think you've got entities masquerading themselves off as ancient gods, like Baal and Lucifer, or whatever you want to call them. And these aliens, they like human sacrifice. And if you look at human sacrifice throughout history, they're doing these to gods. And maybe these are just aliens, because again, if you really go deep into the alien stuff, the Majestic 12 stuff, it's about not only human harvesting for the humans, but human harvesting it's an intergalactic human harvesting thing. If you go deep down the rabbit hole deep enough, that's the aliens also are here to harvest us for our adrenalized blood.
Have you ever had a 20 and back?
I think sometimes I think I might have been in that program, but I've never been able to access any memories to prove it otherwise. But are we referring to the program where they took people to Mars for 20 years and then brought them back and erased their memories? Yeah. So are you a 20 and back member?
Nah, no. I'm upper caste. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay. But you're reptilian then.
Right, exactly. No, I'm a Nordic, actually.
Are you tall?
Wait, no, that doesn't work because I'm actually I'm like 5'7".
I'm 6'5".
I heard you say that one time, but the weird thing is I can't picture you being that tall just from your face.
Well, that's what I do. That's another thing I do. I always fuck with people. I'm always sitting down, and then I will.
That's so tall.
When the time is right, I spring the trap and I stand up and like, caught you, bitch. I'm 6'5".
Stand right next to him.
Exactly. The trap is set.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. It was right there. I was gonna say it. Hold on. I lost it.
It's okay.
I lost it.
So you got David Icke coming on the show?
Good. I was gonna mention that too, because we were talking about reptilians. Yeah, he's apparently coming on here. So,
dude, that's a huge get. How did that happen?
I don't know. I feel like the way that this podcast works, and you're included in it because we're all family to an extent here.
Well, yeah, we're all one. Yeah,
we're all one. I just ask. I literally just go and ask.
There you are.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Anyway. We just ask. I just ask. I just email them.
I think that's
and if they're in my heart,
it's a heart. Because there's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people that I want to ask that I'm like, they might be like, fuck off. So it's just easier not to ask. But no, that's totally inspiring. Actually, I needed to hear that from you. So thanks.
I have a feeling though that if you asked anybody and you said you're you, they
Right, but
would
that's
be
what you think. But it's
yeah,
you're
that is
still. Everybody feels like they're faking it. I think most people do, unless they're complete psycho. They feel like they're unworthy and they're faking it, and they're gonna get a no. I mean, most people I feel are like that. And so even if
Well,
you
yeah,
think,
we're all
oh,
one. Yeah.
that person is famous, or he knows this person, or he's better than me, or he's more talented, or no, it's not necessarily the case, because then the other
All right,
person
that's
might be thinking
inspiring
the
because there's
same
a lot
thing,
of
like
people
they're
I'm like
unworthy,
nervous.
and that
Uh-oh,
person.
what happened
So
now?
no,
Where'd
it's
you
very
go?
inspiring to hear you say that, and you all.
Uh-oh.
Hey, you get a no, you get a no, but at least you ask. And
right.
see,
I
it's
thought
interesting
I'm
you
glad
say
I
that.
didn't
I'm
hit
not
anything. Are you still
with
there?
women. I will totally have that same philosophy. I don't give a shit how many
I just
times
see a
I'm
picture
shot
of your
down,
face here,
because
a little thumbnail.
I'm in the same position I started in if I get the no. So it
Let's
doesn't
see.
matter to me
Share
if the girl
screen.
rejects me.
Host
If she
disabled
says
screen
yes, then
sharing. So
I've
you
gained
just
something, and it didn't
disabled
cost
it.
me anything. But if she says no, I'm in the same position I started in. Well, maybe she's like, well, this
And
fucking
your
loser
audio is
likes me
iffy. I
now,
can barely hear
and now I have to
anything.
avoid him forever. But most of the time, you're going to go for it, and you're going
I
to.
can hear you, but it's like
Hopefully, you're
your
going
mics are
for
totally
almost
off
a
now. Whatever
confirmed
happened.
easy victory. You're not going to put yourself in a position where you're going to get shot down and look like a fool.
Tell
But
us about
It's
your
still
love
recording
life.
though, at
What is it
least.
like? What's
my
going
love
on?
life right
Do you
now
guys edit these, or do
is,
you just
because
like
of the
put
nature of how I
repost them as soon
live.
as you do
I
them?
don't really have a serious
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
girlfriend. I have somebody I'm talking to, and we hang out and stuff. But in terms of, I've been out of a serious relationship now for a few years, and I've been, like I said, living here at this float center.
No,
for
it's still the
past
same.
2 years now. Just trying to make it great here for people, and put my life back together, because the previous relationship was that dark night of the soul relationship for me, and I learned a lot about that and myself, and I needed to work on myself and figure out why I attracted what I attracted before I unconsciously went out and did it again. But luckily for me, and it's usually the case for most people, they get burned so bad that they wake up and then they learn why they got burned so bad, or how they destroyed their life, or why this woman wrecked their situation and gutted them. And then you hopefully won't repeat it. But what you do see in unconscious people's lives is, and this is happening to me, they'll date somebody, and then it won't work out, and they'll go unconsciously move on to the next thing. And they don't realize it, but it's a bigger version of the same thing a lot of the time. A lot of the same elements that they unconsciously didn't work out or understand or heal or pick up on, repeat in the same person, same kind of a person, but at a bigger level. And it keeps going on and going on until you keep getting slapped, kicked, not metaphorically, not literally sometimes, or sometimes literally. You have an abusive person that's going to do that to you. But that's the universe. That's the universe reaching out through another person to say, wake up. And one of the revelations of the mushrooms for me, when I was in a bad spot trying to figure out why I attracted the relationship, was the mushroom was basically said, you're attracting into your life externally in form, in a person, how you feel about yourself internally. And that said a lot about the person I was with at the time, because I was not in the best relationship. And it was, in a lot of ways, I was able to make direct corollaries to my internal situation manifesting in this person externally. And it's almost a guarantee for everybody else. I mean, it's a guarantee. You attract what you are, your vibe attracts your tribe, and the person you're going to let into your holy of holies, in your most intimate space, i.e. a relationship, usually are going to be the most powerful teachers you can attract. So that's why I tread with caution now. To go back to the initial question of why, or what's my relationship, I'm high standards, looking for the right thing, and don't want to get caught in a trap with somebody who doesn't know what they want. So that means I have to polish my own mirror to attract somebody who's also. So, a lot of the people I'm attracting right now are in that same position of working on their lives, coming out of the dark night of the soul. But because here's the other thing. So not only do I attract people on my level of like spiritual searching and vibration, but unfortunately or fortunately, because I emit a certain light, everything's attracted to the light, not just people on my level, but people that, not to say beneath me, but people, I guess, who are relatively speaking unconscious. And so they are blindly going towards that light that you're emitting. And so sometimes when I'm sending out a feeling of God is in you and you're in my space of loving oneness and non-judgment, people that have never felt that before, it can be overwhelming to be in a space where I'm not looking at you from a judgment or a duality perspective, but you're in my space of oneness. And that can be overwhelming for people to the point where they think I have feelings for them. So it's this very careful line I have to walk of, I want to help people, and but I don't touch or get too intimate. But I definitely, even just with words or looking someone in the eyes, it can be overwhelming. Now, the guy that preceded me here before we bought this place, he was a hugger. He'd hug everybody that walked through the door. I'm not like that. But it can be overwhelming. And so, no, I'm not in a relationship right now, a committed, serious one. And I'm still doing the work internally to manifest externally something that I would really risk total destruction on again. Because I think with me, that would be the worry, is I'm much better off right now alone, going at the speed of my own desires and things I need to do. If you're not yoked evenly with the right person, I mean, a lot of times it's this happening. It's like two people going in the opposite direction. You need to be going in the same direction. The ships need to sail in the same direction.
Yeah.
And again, this comes from consciousness, conscious work, from mushrooms, floating, meditation, yoga, things that bring you into the present moment are going to help wake you up. And floating's, I think, at the top of the list in terms of things that you can do that are legal, that make you feel good. It's not gonna, there's no downside to it. Like, you take a psychedelic, there's a downside a lot of times with LSD. You're not gonna feel good for a day or two afterwards. You're gonna be blown out because your brain has been lit up for 12 hours. There's no downside to floating, except for maybe if you're not swimming in the money like Scrooge McDuck. It's not like the most expensive thing. Like, for example, it's all relative. A lot of cryotherapy sessions, they're 3 minutes long, but they're the same price as a lot of times a 60-minute float session. Right? Or you go for a meal. You can have one meal. That meal can last you a half hour, an hour. I don't know if you're going to count shitting it out too, but you can have a meal, and that could be a $60 meal. It all depends on where you want to put your money. Here's another example. Your bar tab, $100, $60. You could have floated. Instead of putting spiritual poison in your body, you could be doing the opposite. So it's where your priorities are at. It's always the people who need to float the most are the ones that aren't going to do it. The people who have no time, the people who are in the worst shape. The only people I wouldn't recommend float, at least on my time, is we discourage people who can't get in and out of the tank unless they bring somebody. But aside from that, because sometimes some of these tanks and some of these people, I mean, I put a 500-pounder in the tank, but it was not easy for them to get out. So, but big people will fit. I'm 6'5". I'm about like 175 pounds. So I'm not like a huge person, but lengthwise, we can put people up to 7 feet. And like I said, close to 500 pounds. The problem with a 500-pounder is water displacement. You know what I mean? So they get in and the water level goes up, the water level in the tank's only like 10 to 12 inches. So here's the other thing. You get somebody fat enough in the tank, they're going to rub the bottom. Even if the tank, even if the tank's done correctly, it's just, if you're a ball, versus a straight line, a plank versus a ball, I mean, that's the form of your body. Sometimes it rubs. And so I'm always having to make sure that these tanks are ready to go for every body type. And so if you come float where I am, and I'm not going to give it out because I like people to do the homework. And I also don't like to just give it out because I took my Instagram down for a few days the other day and I had people calling me up saying, "Hey, where'd you go?" Calling my business, which is funny and cool. But
that's what I did though.
Was that you? Was that you that called?
Well, are you referring to one? You said people. Are you referring to one or multiple?
I had lots of people concerned over different channels, but yeah, I had one specifically. Was that you? Did you call the line?
Well, that was me. Yeah, I called Total Zen. Wait.
Oh yeah. But I've had other people call too.
Okay, good. Well, I just called you because I was like, damn, I know he probably gets 1 million messages on Instagram.
That's what it was too. You needed to find out about the show, I think, right?
But I was just I just wanted to make sure I knew where to send you the link to. That would be good for you.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
But I promise, like that, I just saw it like one time in the past or something, and it is just not going to leave my memory. And I'm a industrious person, and I'll be like, well, I bet I will call the float center.
Oh, listen.
I
like your asking to, what do they call it? Gumption, not gumption, but
chutzpah.
Yeah, to go out there and ask the interview and even to get rejected, that's cool. Because now, you can talk to David Icke, and we talked now, and I try to say yes to as many people as I can, because it's the same thing. Yeah, pay it forward, and you want people to say yes to you, so you got to say yes to them.
And sadly, we're not really it's not like we're personalities per se, but we haven't been asked to do any podcasts, but I would love to do other podcasts. And we were going to do one, but for some reason it just fell through. And I was like, man, you're in Houston. Can we just do it in person? Like, we really don't actually love the Zoom podcast per se, just because this is going well because I think our Wi-Fi is very good. But if you don't have great Wi-Fi, man, it makes it hard on the discussion.
Yeah. Well, I think if I had one tip in terms of getting people to want to interview you, I need to know, like, you need to know like a more specific format. I don't know what like just offhand, you know what I mean? Not doing a deep dive on what you do. I don't know what the format or the theme of the show is, like what kind of guests you normally have. Mine is kind of that way too, but mine is there's a broad, if you know the Instagram, you know, it's psychedelics, you know, it's meme talk and whatever I'm doing on the page. But and maybe this is advice to me too, but I'm not trying to, I don't want to even do anything with this anymore. Sometimes I just want to just walk away and say, you know what, like I want to interview Hamilton Moore. If there's a million Hamilton Moore's interviews, I don't need to do, why do I need to do that? I could talk about, but then I think, okay, you know what though, there are not anybody living at a float center like me doing psychedelics, helping people do that, and being honest about it, giving a unique experience. So
also, like, you made a good point there. It's actually not, from my perspective, I'll speak for me, I'm not really doing it for other people necessarily. That's part of it, especially interviewing.
That's why I keep doing it. I keep doing it for me because I don't have advertising. I don't have, I'm not trying to like get a sponsor or anything. If anything, I'm trying to get people to give me free floats so I can give it to my guests. But it's all about seeing how far I could take it. And again, one thing I've learned with psychedelics and the nature of reality is if you have a little string and you keep pulling at it, things will keep happening. So
that's totally accurate.
And so you interview me and you David Icke, and then who else could you interview next, right? Based on that. So I wouldn't even worry about what I wouldn't worry about interviewing people if I were you. I would worry about or being interviewed. I would worry about interviewing just better guests.
Yeah,
and
I feel
by virtue of you interviewing better guests, you're just known as a personality.
Totally.
And then by being virtue of personality, then people want to interview you. But if it, play to your strengths.
And I understand what you're saying from like a third person perspective. Our maybe channel identity could be considered a little bit amorphous, because it is, in the sense that actually we started the Houston Ensemble as a band.
Well, that's the thing. That was what threw me off initially. Was I'm like, what is this ensemble stuff? Is this like a jazz band? What is this? And so I looked at it at first, and I started looking at the videos, the earlier videos, and that seemed to be like maybe you had switched formats halfway through, and now you're at this new format, which is whatever you're doing now.
Well, we've been going hard on the podcast. There's no doubt about that. We do have a band that plays every day here in Houston.
I just think maybe the name was confusing at first.
If you were us, what would you exactly do?
If I were you, what would I exactly do? Mm-hmm. It looks like you're already ahead of me in a lot of ways with your studio setup and all. But if I were you, what would I do?
I think he told us just get great guests.
Yeah, I would,
but even for the identity.
I would just. Here's what I would do if I were you, actually, would just relax more. And by virtue of relaxing more, everything else in your life as a byproduct of the relaxing will be better. You're more focused, you're sharper, you can interview better, you just everything is better. But in terms of the podcast, you want specific information, he's right, I just gave it to you. You played your strengths. Your strengths, at least from first encounter, is what you told me. You're good at ballsy asking people for interviews, and then, you're interviewing them. So play to that. And then as you navigate these interviews, you learn what you need, where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. And that's been the case for me. And you get bolder, you get stronger, you get better. Yeah. You come up with more ideas. You find out what works. You find out what your audience likes, doesn't like. Yeah. Be open to criticism. You are, which is cool. So I'm the same way. And that's the good thing about having a podcast, where right now I don't have any sponsors or anything. I can do anything I want. I can add sound effects. I can take the sound effects away. I can do 3 episodes in a row of me talking if I want. I was trying to do a format of 1 week me and 1 week just me talking for an hour, and then the next week a guest. But life doesn't always work out like that. Initially, the first year of me trying to do the podcast was like, you know what? I only want to interview people if they've done floating. That's it. It's Float Universe, and that's how it should be. But I had a lot of people that had floated wouldn't want to do the interview, or I couldn't get people in the float tank that I wanted to interview. And so it was like, I'm never going to get this done unless I just start going at it. And so you say, fuck it. You grow where you're planted. You work with what you got, and you go from there. And you've already got a great setup, and you've got, wow, if you really got David Icke lined up, then really, I mean, the ball's in your court to drop, to fuck up and lose. So you won't, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a pretty big get. So if I were you, just have lots of questions. You don't have lots of dead airspace. Not that you are now, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
the best questions possible. Like, do as much research as you can before you interview them, and try to ask questions that nobody's ever asked.
One thing that this is not I don't know if anybody's ever asked this, but I haven't heard this from my listening to you. I've just been curious about this personally. How did you come to own this float center?
Okay, that's a great story. So it's a perfect example of, you don't need anything in life, that, when it's time, you will manifest what you need, and God will take care of the rest. So how did I get this float center in particular? For starters, I'm a sweat equity partner. So that means I work from my part of the ownership. I also get paid as well, but I'm also a sweat equity partner. But going back originally, so I've been floating at this place now. It's been around 6 years its entirety. And long story short, before we took over the past last part of the thing, it started to go down in quality. They didn't take care of the place, and it suffered. The guy needed to get rid of the tanks, and he's like, hey man, I know you know people that float, and you can help me sell these tanks. I'll give you a cut of the action. So I reached out to my friend who used to float here with me, and she got me into floating here. And I said, hey, you better go float for the last time. They're going to shut the doors. They're getting rid of the tanks. They got to shut down. The guy's over it, and they don't want to do it anymore. And she's like, well, how much are they selling it for? It was a great price. That was the other thing. I didn't have the money at the time, but it was a price that we couldn't refuse, and it included everything: the clientele, this is a rental, the building, but everything else, the tanks, all that. An offer we couldn't refuse, really. So, but it only could be done if I lived here, boots on the ground every day, turned around everything that was wrong with it, because there was a whole bunch of problems, both cosmetically and in terms of, like, bad reviews, service, stuff like that. So boots on the ground, turn it around. And that's what I've been doing here now, and really learning the nuances of floating, what makes a great float. You come here, you're going to get the owner experience. You're going to get the float universe experience. You're going to get somebody who's obsessed with it. So you're not going to get somebody who's dicking off with their $8.75 an hour, looking on their phone about what's happening after they get off work. You get to float with me. You get the best, as best I can get it, the tank and the experience from beginning to end. And I'm holding that space, hopefully, where you can reach some enlightenment level plateau while you're here as well. And that does happen from time to time, where people have a powerful experience and they're like, oh, I felt like I was just doing DMT. What were you doing? And I'm just outside the tank smoking weed in the back alley. You know what I mean? Letting them do their thing. But so I manifested it through putting years of energy in terms of helping this place while I was a client. And it's like, who's the rightful owner? It's like, put the baby in who's going to split the baby in half? No, we're going to just let the baby be. And I'm the rightful owner. I'm the rightful caretaker. The universe has decided, I guess, for now. And so I'm living here, and I'm giving the most spectacular floats. I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's a great float. It's a 9.9 or above. And that's not even bragging. And then I see other people float, and it's not as good. So my goal here is, when you come to float, you leave here, if I never see you again, that you know what floating's about, you got your money's worth, and you would go do it again somewhere else. It's not even about you coming back here. It's about me getting floating to the point where it reaches, with people like Joe Rogan already doing it. But there's still a lot of people that don't know anything about floating at all. Never heard of it. So that's why I'm still doing it. And the passion, it's helped me. It's helped so many other people. And so my friend ended up putting out the cash. I moved in, and over the past few years, and the coronavirus stepped in last year and shut us down. And it actually, again, everything's silver linings. It gave us an opportunity to do things we wouldn't be able to do otherwise, because how can you take down a whole room, pull a tank out for a month and a half and redo a room and expect to have people float in the other room? So the state shutting us down for a month and a half was a blessing that, so we've been able to retool everything here, make it better than it ever was. And I basically manifested a float center for free. right? Because
Wow.
I look at everything like I'm going to die one day. Nothing is mine. It doesn't really matter what I own. And so the fact that I have manifested this, and here's the great thing, because I'm the sweat equity, I don't have to deal with. I told my business partner, I said, look, we will leverage my stuff online. We will my personality. I will run the show here. I know everything there is to know about floating. You pay the bills. You write the checks, and you do all the lawyer stuff because she's a lawyer, and that's what we've been doing. So I have manifested this experience of floating every day for free, giving the opportunity to many of my friends. Many of the people on the account have come here and floated for free. I had somebody come in the other day off the account. They floated for free. So I've been able to not only give myself that experience now for 2 years, float as many people possible. We're starting to make money. I wouldn't recommend people who are trying to get rich to get into this, but the payoff is way more than money for me. So yeah, I've manifested this experience with nothing. And so it's possible, anybody who's out there down in their luck, because I was living with my parents at the time, post this relationship that gutted me. I was really trying to put my life back together. I was trying in my own means to find people who had money. I was trying on my own to manifest my own float center, didn't knowing that this other thing was going to happen. So through the grace of whatever you want to call it, God, I'm here running the show, giving the best floats possible, with zero effort. Like the true Taoist Wu Wei thing has happened to me, of just showing up and being present and seeing what the universe has next for me. And the good thing about being in such a elevated space is the desires are minimal. So it's like, it's easy to be more present when you don't have as many desires, pulling you outward towards, oh, I need to do this or that to create this or that scenario. So yeah, I manifested it out of nowhere. And I have a great business partner who is even more enlightened than I could ever imagine. So it's pure grace.
Wow. This kind of goes against what you just said, but just because I'm curious, do you have a vision of where you want to be in, say, like 30 years or 20 years?
Well, this is what's interesting. I kind of do sometimes, and I kind of don't. Meaning, okay, for example, 5 years ago, I was a wedding photographer, and I was traveling across the country doing Indian weddings, and I had never heard of floating barely at all. I mean, I might have heard about it a little bit in the 90s when it was just John Lilly, literally. And then, Hamilton Morris and then Joe Rogan got us back into it here not too long ago. That's what got me into it, was the Hamilton one. So what was the question? I forgot.
20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, 20 years from now. So I didn't expect that. There's certain things sometimes in life where you walk through a door of experience of something happening to you, and then you're going towards that, and you've completely changed your mind on how you see life. And that was how floating was for me. The day before I floated, I had my life completely pegged in one direction. It's going to go this way. I want it to go this way. And, my ego has certain desires, and it wanted it. And then it experienced the bliss of floating. And I think I must have let go of a lot of stuff that first float, because I was able to change direction really fast and drop a lot of things. And it was just pure magic. So I do have visions. I wanted to do putting these in airports. But the problem with airports is it's a lot of upfront cost. It's hard to get in big airports, and you need to make them soundproof, which is also its own expense. So I wanted to franchise these things, but 2 years on the ground here now, and a lot of it was rebuilding. And then we had the coronavirus economy for a year, which was shitty. Even in Florida, it was tough, but we survived by virtue of the fact that I'm here, living here, taking almost a pay cut to do it. But we're the only ones surviving. The other float centers I've watched over the past year in 2020, I can't even, probably maybe more than 20 float centers across the country either shut down or change hands. And there's been one in town here in Orlando that shut down. So I have these visions sometimes that maybe I'll end up buying some of these float centers if we're successful and these people want to get out, and we'll just franchise that way. Or there's the other variable of, I could die tomorrow, or another thing could come into my life where I'm like, oh, I want to do this now. But as of now, floating and owning a float center is great for a few reasons. Because obviously, if you want to float, I don't recommend putting them in your house. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Unless you're rich, unless you have like a second little room to put them in, like a garage outside of your house, the humidity and the salt everywhere all the time, it's in the air. the constant maintenance, you can't shut them down. If you turn your tank off at night, the water will get cold, and eventually the salt will crystallize and seize the motor and the pipes and all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
So they're constant upkeep. And if you're not going to use them all the time, or you don't have a room or somebody to take care of it and keep it outside of your main living space, it's a pain in the ass. So I'm going to continue to do this because I just like floating, and it really works. And I've helped so many people now. I've planted so many seeds over the past 2 years. I've got so many people excited that want to build their own float centers, that anything could happen. I've opened up so many possibilities over the past 2 years just by giving. My time, my energy, and my passion has helped fuel it, of course. I think I would probably do this almost for free, which is basically what I'm doing. Just enough to smoke weed and eat, and enough money for some psychedelics from time to time. But a lot of times the psychedelics are gift from people. I don't have to. I don't really have to wait too long to manifest things, especially if they're within the realm of possibility. That's a good tip for people, by the way, who want to manifest in their life. It's manifesting is easy to do, but it's all about believability, possibility, and is it possible that whatever you want to manifest is within the next logical few steps you could take? It's it's like, I want to be a billionaire. Well, there's a lot of ways to get there, but there's almost no way except for winning the lottery or something to get there immediately as a manifestation. So manifestation has to play within the limits of reality to a degree, but at the lower level of manifestation, like manifesting quarters and stuff, and like parking spaces, it's very easy to do. And it's also about your believability, how much electromagnetic energy in your heart and mind, like can you picture it? Yes, but how much electromagnetic energy of I believe I'm worthy, or I have the possibility or the means to attract $1 billion, right? Maybe $10. That's easy to do. You can attract the possibility of earning $10. But so manifestation a lot of times is about the believability of you being able to do it as the next possible step. So those little simple law of attraction. I don't know if you do that kind of stuff on that.
Yeah, totally. No, 100%. Another thing that I think, there's this amazing channel on YouTube called Bright Insight, and he talks all about the pyramids, and he's on this, how are they actually made? And he goes really deep into all of it, and he's so cool. And he was in the army, and he did all this stuff, and he's just like, I love the pyramids so much. And he's been there recently, went to Egypt like last month or something, and he's so excited about it, and he's so genuine. And he's like, you can literally do anything you want ever, but the first thing is just get off the couch and just take one step towards that direction, which is essentially what you're saying.
Well, that's part of it. But yeah, the key to the manifestation is being like at that step where it's going to happen as the next step. Whereas the couch is like the first step, getting off of the couch. But it's like, I want to manifest something. Like I said, it's easy to find a quarter on the ground. It's hard to find a briefcase full of $100 bills. As a possible reality. I mean, think about it. That's how for me. I'll give you a perfect example. When I first started having an awakening, started floating, started doing psychedelics, I learned it was about possibilities and probabilities. That perfect example was I wanted to manifest a pink stealth fighter. Stealth fighter is usually black. It's very easy to manifest a black. The possibilities are very high. The probability is very high. But probability of manifesting a pink stealth bomber is very low, but it's possible. So it's about possibility and probability. And so over time, I kept putting this mental thought of trying to see a pink stealth fighter. And I was trying to create that energy in my heart of just, I don't know, I didn't know how it was going to manifest. But one day and here was the final tip. The final tip is to be able to let it go like a boomerang, right? You have to let that thing you want to manifest go, meaning you have to stop thinking about it. Because when you're thinking about wanting that thing, you're creating the energy of wanting it, which is not having it. And so reality will keep coalescing to make you want it by not having it. So you have to be able to get to that space. And I think floating helped me achieve this, of just being able to just drop things and let them go and then move on to the next thought. It's like you're in a restaurant and you want your food to come. The minute you let go of that food wanting to come, it comes. You just engage in conversation with the person next to you and stop bitching about where the food is, and the food comes. You're stopping it from happening by wanting it to happen so bad. You're creating the lack reality. So that's what I do. I don't know what the original question was, but there. I think I'm kind of just rambling at this point.
Yeah,
I think what was the
I'm
original question? It doesn't matter.
I don't know. I mean, I'm satiated. If you guys are satiated,
Yeah, I think I mean,
we've been going for a nice while now,
How
and I
long
think
do you normally do your things for?
like an hour.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're over like we're at least an hour and a half.
We're actually, I really think we're maybe getting close to 2. And yeah, but that's also the point is we don't cut it off at any specific point. We just want to see where it flows to. But I feel like, we've gotten to a nice point here.
Oh no, I think yeah. If you don't have any more questions, then I think we've run out of ammunition for tonight.
Yeah, totally.
I mean,
Well,
Plus,
I have more questions, but
ask anything you want. Anything you can literally ask me anything you want.
God.
Now's the chance.
Can this be the last one, the last huzzah?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, okay, so there's like 2, and I'm like, which one's better?
Ask them both. We got time for 2.
We can go for I'm just trying to be respectful to our guest, actually.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
I got time for 2 more questions.
Okay. This might go deep, or this might just be simple. Do we need a biological body to be human? That's the first question.
From the Earth relative perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes us human. A part of it is at least having a human body versus an alien body. Now, is the question: do we need a body in general, a biological body, or is it a human body versus an alien body, or is it just an android body versus a biological body, or just no body versus a body?
Well, yeah, you just made the point right there. So there could be many versions of our experience, but then I guess maybe the better way to put that question is: would the consciousness alter based on the body?
Yes, I think so. I think your emotions are based on, a lot of times, I'm angry because my body's in pain. So I think there's a corollary. I think there's a connection between your mind, body, and your soul/spirit. It just seems to be the case. I'm just going to guess an intuitive yes. These people who want to put their consciousness into this realm for almost an infinite amount of time, like, for example, the theory on the elites is this: they know about karma. They know about it. They know that they fucked up. They know that they're evil, and they know when they die that there's going to be some kind of repercussion that they cannot control. But they think if they can prolong their existence, that they will not have to face this ultimate return to source / hell / lower realm that they've manifested through living evil in evil existence. They don't want to die. They're willing to do anything. And so if they can preserve their consciousness in a machine in this 3D realm, that's what they want to do. Now, I think that's hell. Knowing what I know about the spirit through what I've experienced, I think we all want to be free of this body. And you get into stuff like Osho. When you die, it's like the ultimate orgasm to have that last when you die, so we don't want to be here. And a lot of people that have out-of-body experiences say, I didn't want to come back. It was so nice to be out of my body, and I felt so free and happy and blissful. And so I think a human body is a big component of the human experience, but I don't think that's what necessarily fully makes us human. It's a tough question to answer, but I think there's a corollary between the mind and the body. Here's what I'll say about the mind and the body, actually. The mind creates the body, meaning what's happening in your body is a byproduct of what's coming downstream from the mind. So if you're anxious, you're going to start creating that chemical situation in your body that the anxiety is creating, or the depression, the sadness, or if you're running around, you're feeling euphoric and you got those happy chemicals pushing around inside of you. You're a chemical bag of experiences pushing through space and time, right? It's just a weird thing that we are. And so you do exercises, you can release emotions, like stored experiences in your cells. I do a thing called traumatic release exercises, where you do specific exercises that concentrate on releasing the psoas muscles, which apparently all this powerful emotional like trauma, so what happens is when we experience trauma, we're conscious. And a lot of times we will repress the trauma that's happening to us. We don't sit there and just shake it out. Whereas if you watch animals will, because they're not conscious beings like we are, they don't have shame or whatever. They're not trying to hide that they've been injured. They will shake it out. what happens over time is we accumulate these things inside of us, whether it's through some kind of mental trauma as a child that we don't know how to deal with because we just don't understand. So we compartmentalize and it's stored in the body. Whether we're physically assaulted or traumatized, that's stored within the body. Ultimately, even all these emotions and physicalities are stored within the body, and specifically in the psoas muscles. And you do this exercise and it gets your psoas muscles to the point where they start shaking and your whole body, it's waves into the body, and you start having releases, and you're laying there with your eyes closed. Your whole body's tremoring now on its own. You've triggered it to the point where it's now convulsing out all these emotions, and you're there with your eyes closed, and you're seeing all these things that you've forgotten about that maybe have traumatized you. I'll give you another experience. There was this woman I was friends with, and I was giving her a massage at her house one night, and she's like a yoga teacher, and she had like this gun where it was like a laser gun, and you could put it on your body, put a little heat on it, and it would help, like it was helping release things. Well, I would put my hand on these spots and get it going and help her release these things. And every different spot, I would have a vision, and I would tell her the vision I was having. And I'm not a psychic or anything. I do from time to time on psychedelics, or because of the floating, have these fifth dimensional space experience, which I call psychic, which is what psychics are actually doing. But anyway, so I'm tapping into the grid of energy into these spots contained within her body through massage and this laser beam. And I'm having these visions, and she's telling me, she's like, yeah, this is where this boyfriend abused me here, and this guy did this to me there, and I tripped and fell there when I was a kid. I'm like, holy shit, like I'm seeing all these things. I don't know anything about these things, and it's really trauma that's been stored in your body. So I'm a true believer, again, through experience, that these things are stored inside of us, and through sweating, through floating, through traumatic release exercises, yoga, you can work through these things. I can't tell how many times I've seen people cry in a yoga room, just releasing stuff. So I guess I don't know where that initial question where we got with that, but I think
the intricacy of the mind versus body.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's why I'm a big proponent of the float tank, because the body is flowing downstream, is being created via the mind. And if you've got a calm, relaxed, healthy mind, more than likely that's going to flow downstream into your body, and you're going to have a nice, strong, healthy body, or at least you're going to start recognizing where you've gone wrong, what you need to eat better, or exercise, or you need to see the chiropractor, or you need to get a massage or something, because something's not right. So again, float tank all across the board, mental, physical, spiritual, metaphysical. The more time you give it, the more benefits you're going to get. That's my mission. And so what was the other question? You had two questions.
I mean, you basically touched upon it, because you discussed the effect on the body to the mind, and then the effect on the mind to the body. And what I got out of it was that basically they're intertwined.
And, yeah, but I think the brain takes the mind takes the higher position. I truly believe that if you work in the mind first, everything downstream will eventually become an alignment with the mind that has been repaired. You've gotten rid of the false belief systems that you've taken on. Like you get in the float tank and you're laying there, and your mind is like a command prompt, or it's like your windows are open, and you see all these programs and belief systems that you've taken on, you've forgotten about, you've let go, and you can go in and you can close them up, and you say, I can get my processing power back. I can get my mind to be a quieter, smoother running machine. I don't need to have all these things anymore. Or if you're a creative person, you lay there and you get all these ideas. You go deep in your mind, and that's where the big fish are, at the deep, dark levels, stillness.
That's perfect for me. Anything you want to add to that, Chad?
You know what? I do have one more question for you. This is a quick one, actually.
Anything.
Based on what I've listened to you speak about before, do you eat a certain way?
I'm a big believer in eating what your body kind of tells you to eat. And as much as you can intellectualize through other people's, their beliefs of what you should eat, or their experience, you should be vegan, you should be keto, you should be this diet, that diet. I am a picky eater. I try to not eat a ton of meat. I will eat meat from time to time, because I think that's how I grew up, and that's how my body has known to grow or survive, whatever the process is. I didn't grow up on carrots and celery. I grew up on, I think most people, a normal, unfortunately, a sad American diet. What is it? The standard American diet, sad, for the most part. And then you become conscious, and you say, well, I shouldn't eat this or that. Or the mushrooms say, hey man, don't eat that anymore. But no, I think I eat what I want to eat, and it's a lot of because I live in the float center. Also, I don't have a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I literally am like drinking athletic greens and muscle milk and anything you can buy at the grocery store that doesn't need any kind of heavy prep.
Oh,
And then
wow.
obviously I'll treat myself from time to time with Taco Bell, Chipotle,
Oh,
the
yeah.
standard crap that's around me here. But
Oh,
to be
man.
honest with you, I'm not much of a food person. I'm not a foodie at all. A lot of times I will date a woman and it'll go south quick because I'm picky, and that's an issue. I used to live in Japan. That was a big issue over there, that I was so picky because I don't like seafood. I don't like eating, especially lobsters, crabs, the bugs of the sea. So
Wow.
I'm a picky person. And I think also it might have to do with awakening, and not that I'm a breatharian, but
Yeah,
I think you reach a certain level where the food is almost like you're like a hot air balloon, and that's just weight. And,
it is.
I think
Yeah.
certain foods can be grounding. Like sometimes, I don't even know if this is true, but I feel it works for me that sometimes when I'm too flighty, I will go and eat some meat. I will go eat something dense to at least maybe, even
Oh,
if it's the
wow.
placebo of me feeling like I've kind of weighted myself down, I feel like it can be grounding. And that's the other thing. Floating is an extremely grounding exercise as well. A post float or post psychedelic float is probably one of the best things you can do, because it's going to ground you, and it's also going to put your brain back together from all the damage you've done the night before on LSD or MDMA. Mushrooms, not so much. I usually feel pretty good the night after mushrooms, but usually LSD and MDMA, I am like usually like a crackhead, and I look like one, and I haven't slept, and I can barely function. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I called the float center one time before we owned it. I said, and I couldn't even speak. I was talking like that. I'm not trying to be offensive, but I could not speak. I was literally talking like that. I could just barely get it where he understood I needed to float. I came and I floated. I got in the float tank. I came back out, and I'm talking like normal. And so
That's hilarious.
the float tank works, man. It works.
It does. There's no
When I'm
doubt.
smoking weed all day, when I'm smoking weed all day long, and I blow my adrenal glands out, and I feel exhausted. I'm fucking exhausted, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I will get in the float tank on my lunch break, and I am just put back together, man. And I'm ready for round two of
Wow.
more weed smoking. If you want, it could be that. But no, usually it's bedtime. But yeah, man, definitely. Thanks for having me on tonight, and it's been fun. And maybe we'll do round two. Maybe I can have you on mine. We'll talk about floating, since you floated a lot.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anything
man.
else?
No, I think that's cool, and we're so appreciative that you came, and
Well, you got the special video version. I usually don't give anybody the video version, but here it's easier for me to do the video when I'm being interviewed, because when I'm
sure.
interviewing somebody, I'm trying to be a great listener, but I'm also trying to find jokes to make. I'm also trying to find the segues in the next question.
Yeah.
Like for me as an interviewer, it's like what is going to be the next question, unless you've got a real good natural flow going. But a lot of times I've got like 15, 20 questions in front of me that
Yeah.
I want to ask, and I'm trying to find unique ways to segue into that. So interviewing for me is a very active thing. And there's two ways I like to interview, which is know nothing about them at all, go in completely blind and ask questions like I don't even know them at all, or do every interview possible and do all the
Right.
research and ask questions about questions about questions, interviews from 10 years ago, stuff like
Y-
that.
I
Nardwar type stuff.
Yeah, I literally just quoted you on that yesterday when I was speaking to somebody about interviewing people, because I listened to you say that, and I think both are very important things to do. But
Cool.
man, so Houston Ensemble episode 22, Float
Episode
Universe.
22. Yay. Episode
And by the way,
22.
I forgot to say, you said your other lucky number was 17,
Yeah.
and for me, 8 is my lucky number. And good news for us, we start at 8 p.m. Central Time. And 17 equals 8, and so I'm gonna see that as well, and I'm gonna feel that. So it's all very linked up.
And
And
22 is 4, and that's half of 8. So there you go.
yeah, we're in there. So everybody, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Check out Float Universe on Instagram. Check them out in Florida. We're gonna link everything in the description, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Likewise. Thank
And
you too.
we look, I'm gonna be talking to you soon in some version or another.
Yeah, I can look forward to seeing this online, and I'll pass the links on. And
Yeah, we'll share it with you tomorrow, probably when it comes out.
Yeah.
Cool,
We're
man.
gonna try to get it released within a day.
Well, if you're ever in Florida, look me up and we'll get together and we will do something fun.
Thank you so much, man.
All right, man.
Likewise,
We'll talk
guys,
to you soon.
Thanks for spreading the float message. God bless you next time.
God bless
God bless
you.
you too, man.
Thanks.
See ya.
Appreciate you.
See ya.
ya.
Bye.